your second marriage is likely doomed for failure. Yeah, I know it sucks. And I'm going to tell you why. And here's a scoop. First time you get married, your chances of divorce are 50%. Second marriage, the chances, some studies show up to 70% divorce rate, right? And so you're like, well, crap. Here you're thinking the grass is greener. I'm here to tell you that not necessarily, okay? And so, hey, my name is Brenda. You guys have probably been here at the channel for a while, and welcome to this subject on second marriage. And this is a really touchy subject because people are really excited. They get divorced. They're like, okay, I got a second start. I know exactly what I don't want, right? You dealt with all these things with your ex. You're like, I don't want this. I don't want this. I don't want this. And generally what happens is people end up with the complete opposite human, but they don't realize that, every human has issues. And so this is number one. Here's the number one reason. I want to share with you 5 tips, 5 reasons why the second marriages are more likely to fail. Okay. However, there's not all hope is lost. Okay. You have a chance to redeem this. Just knowing these and looking out for these, awareness is 90% of the cure, right? You are going to be aware of these top 5 things that cause the second marriage to fail so that you can mitigate them, you can plan for them, you can adjust and pivot and have open communication with your potential second spouse so that you can get through it in a healthy way. Okay. So first and foremost, here's the reason. It's a snowball of trauma effect, okay? Here's what happens when you first get married. You're not taught emotional intelligence anywhere. Schools don't teach it. Your parents are the best example. And majority of parents, let's just be honest, they don't understand what in the hell they're doing. Their emotional stability, their lack of communication or over communication or yelling through communication or their anger gets triggered and they're training you from the time that you're tiny that this is how you behave and this is how you resolve conflict. The problem is they're probably not doing it well, right? And so you're coming out of childhood with a bunch of trauma that you've dealt with, and you're lacking the skills to deal with it. You fall in love, you think things are great, you make this commitment at 18, 19, 20, 24, when you're still not even seasoned in life in any way, shape, or form. Most likely, you didn't have parents that fostered and cultivated you to be who you are, so you're stepping into this space thinking that this person you're going to marry is going to solve all your problems. And you're in this honeymoon phase and your hormones are driven and you're like, this is awesome, right? And they might balance you. The things that you fall in love with now are the things that you hate about that person, okay? Where it was the balance for you and now it drives you crazy. They might be too calm if you're too hyper. And initially that was great because they grounded you. And now you're like, would you come alive, please, right? So the problem is though, is like I said, you enter into that marriage and you're dragging all that childhood trauma into that marriage. Now you get married, you deal with their childhood trauma that they're bringing to the marriage. So there's 2 of you now, and that's colliding. And now you guys you still haven't been taught communication skills, emotional intelligence, how to disengage the emotions from the facts, how to remember the difference between facts versus memory, and on and on and on, right? All these things that I teach my clients where they can understand that their perspective is simply their perspective. The other person in this same exact room is going to have a very different perspective based off of their life experience and the traumas that they've experienced themselves, okay? And so you now have 2 people who've drugged their childhood stuff into it. You're not equipped with skills with how to deal with your childhood emotional traumas. And you get married and you do this thing called life, and then you add kids to the mix, some of you, and then that just explodes things even more, okay? So things escalate and escalate and escalate. You still don't have the tools. You're not equipped to deal with them. Oftentimes, most of my clients come from counselors who aren't giving them the skills and the tools to deal with this. So it's just getting worse and worse and spiraling further and further out of control. After they've been sitting on the counselor's couch for 5, 6, 7, 8 years, nothing is changing, okay? And then you get divorced because you're like, grass is greener. I'm going to go find somebody who's opposite of you, and I'm going to just nail it. I'm going to crush it, and I'm going to have a great life that's going to be totally different than this shit show that I had with you, right? And you walk away from that marriage. And you still don't do the work, and you get into a second marriage with somebody that's different. Now you have your childhood trauma. Then you have the first marriage trauma plus the trauma and triggers that you've brought from that marriage. And now you're bringing both of those into a third marriage. Okay. So this is why I say all the time, if you have not done your emotional work, you have no business whatsoever dating after divorce. You absolutely have no business doing it. You're dragging all that trauma and then you puke it out on this other person when they look at somebody in a way that you don't like, or what they say something that freaks you out. In fact, one of the things I was dating this guy, and if I said, yep, it triggered him and he got so irritated. He was like, that's so disrespectful. And I'm like, disrespectful. Like I answered your question. But to him, it meant disrespect and it meant all these things. And so we talked and worked through it and we figured out like, okay, I'll try to avoid saying yep. And you need to understand, I by no means mean disrespect when I say that, right? So I'll make a concerted effort not to say that. But if it does come out, you need to understand my heart is not in an ugly, disrespectful place, right? So there's all these little things that trigger people that he brought from past relationships. And trust me, I brought plenty, and God help the poor man that I first dated out of my marriage because he dealt with all of mine and he was so patient and dealt with me. But we all bring him and we all do that unless we do that emotional work. Okay. So this is why you also will repeat history with your second marriage, which is why the divorce rate is up to 70%. If you don't deal with it, you don't address your emotional trauma, you will repeat history. You will attract the same kind of mate. You will attract gaping holes in emotional connection, on and on and on, right? So it is critical. It is absolutely critical. If you're thinking about dating after divorce, you've got to do this work or you're setting yourself up for failure in more ways than one, right? And so that is specifically what our system does. My methodology is to get you to the core of the root issues and rebuild yourself in your identity, separate from anyone else, so that you are rock solid, you know who you are, and you're ready to take on not only life, but dating and really find the love of your life and move on with confidence, knowing that you guys can get through anything together, right? Because you've both done the work, you're both being transparent, you're being vulnerable, and that's easier said than done, which is why I have a system to help you get through that. Okay, so here's the second reason that divorces often fail in the second marriage. It's not as scary. You go through your first divorce and so many times people hang on. They climb onto the marriage because they're like, oh my God, I don't want to be a failure. I don't want to do this. I always swore I wouldn't get divorced. And when we got married, we said happily ever after till death do us part. And here we are not dying and we are dying. We're dying emotionally. We're not dying physically. And holy crap, I didn't want to do this. But when you get into the second marriage, you're like, you know what? I survived the first time. I can do it again. I can do it again. Just like that, lickety split. And you're like, screw this. I'm out. And there's this fear that comes up too, where you're like, once a relationship gets hard, you get this attitude of, I'm not doing this shit again, so I'm out. And you bounce. And it's easier to bounce because it's not nearly as scary as it was the first time. You're like a seasoned veteran, right? You know that once you've gotten through one divorce, you can get through 8 of them if you have to, because nothing is more challenging in life than divorce, in my opinion. And so you're able to have that resilience muscle built and you're able to walk a lot more easily. So again, it's critical that you do that work. You make a commitment, you and your partner are on the same page so that you can communicate so that neither of you are going anywhere. And you know, I'm going to say this tip. This is a segue. This might be tip number 6 instead of 5, but one of my coworkers here in our office space had said to me, he's like, through 2+ decades of marriage, not one time did they threaten to leave. Not one time. The one time he said, our divorce is over, it really was over. So not using threatening statements and all that kind of stuff where your insecurity steps in and you're like, oh my God, I'm out of here. Don't do that. Commit to your partner. Be there fully and present that no matter what, you guys are going to get through it. And if you have a partner with you that's willing to work through the hard, you should be able to get through it no matter what. Okay, third reason, and this might even be the number 1 reason in some marriages, is having stepkids. Bringing kids into a new marriage can be quite challenging. If you are not fully 100% on board with each other's parenting styles, with the rules, with financial givings to each kid or not, with nearly every aspect of parenting on how you parent kids, doing a blended family with both kids, particularly if both kids are in the house. Might be different if one set's kids are out of the house and one aren't. That's a little easier. But the reality is when you blend kids and families, it is a stinking challenge. If those kids disrespect the soon-to-be mom or dad, stepmom or dad, if there's this space in there where there's let's take that for example. Maybe one wants to be called mom or dad, and the kids are like, oh, I don't feel comfortable with that. And or they don't want to be called stepdad, or they just want to be called their name, whatever it is. There's all these caveats, and kids are so multifaceted. It has to be handled really carefully in a way that's best for the kids and cultivates your relationship at the same time. But this is a doozy. This really is a big, big challenge when you have a second marriage, is having and dealing with other kids. If there's special needs, if there's anything going on with some of these other kids, it just presents a hurdle that the other party doesn't know oftentimes. And maybe if it's like your kid, oh, this kid's really challenging because of ABCD. Well, you can say that to the other person, but they haven't experienced it in the day in and day out. So they're like, okay, sure, no big deal. I'm on board to do this. But 4, 5, 6 years in, it's like a drip of water where they're like, holy shit, I didn't realize it was this bad. You know what I mean? And they're struggling now, and they're struggling with how to parent. And maybe you guys have grown apart at that point and you're not communicating the way that you should and having those open conversations. So this really can be a massive pitfall in a second marriage if you guys aren't crystal clear on every element of how you're going to parent both sets of kids, if there are some, in any way, shape, or form, to what you call each other, how you discipline, whether spankings are allowed or not, if it's grounding, whatever it may be, all of it. The level of disrespect, like I said, the previous example, if somebody gets spoken to a certain way and it makes them feel really disrespectful, it's worth having that conversation with the kids. Hey, I know we can talk to each other this way and we get it. However, for this person, it's an issue. So let's try to back off of that some. And if there's not respect and care for understanding the other person's needs, then it can just unravel at the seams, okay? So there's another major pitfall of second marriage failures. Okay, a fourth reason why second marriages often fail is that you marry for the wrong reasons. This is, again, why it's so important to do your work before you even step into another relationship. You will subconsciously be driven to not be lonely, to have someone help support you financially, to help someone support you emotionally. It can get really lonely parenting by yourself 24/7 all the time. And it might be that you're just driven by some of these motivators that you really don't even think about. Is it really genuinely for the love and care of this person? Is it genuine that this person can authentically be integrated into your family and your kids' life? Make sure that you check your motivation. And I've said this before in other videos, but do the why statement. I love this person and want him in my life because of why. I love this girl. She's fantastic. And I want her to be a part of my kids' life and my life. Why? Why? Drill down. So you get the answer and then ask why again. Write it down. Ask why again. Why? And you dig deeper. It's like removing layers of an onion, getting to the core of your motivation. And sometimes it can be an ugly motivation, and that's okay. Feel to heal, address it. Maybe you discover, holy shit, I just want security. And that's it. It's really not about this person. And I don't know them well enough. We haven't dated long enough. I don't know, And it's about security. That gives you an opportunity. You can take it two ways. Like, oh crap, this is over. I just ruined all of this. Or it gives you an opportunity to uncover it. And maybe you still are in love with this person. Just because you uncover something there doesn't mean all is lost. You throw the baby out with the bathwater. You can still potentially very much at the very root of things be driven by your love for this person. And you've just gotten down 3 or 4, 5 layers deep. But the core of the onion is that you truly love them. So don't be shocked if you uncover some ugly things that you're like, oh, yeah, I didn't realize that was in me. It's okay. We all have these insecurities and these uglies, if you will, that crop up. We just have to learn to deal with them. When you deal with them in the right way, you can overcome them so that you can focus and turn and you get to have the opportunity to do it well. Okay, fifth reason why it can be such a challenge to deal with a second marriage is dealing with your ex. This is one of the biggest challenges. Now, it can go both ways, and I've heard it both ways. Again, one of my good friends, he has a phenomenal relationship with his ex, and it drives women crazy. It absolutely drives them crazy. He is loving, he cares for her, he's happy to take care of her in some ways, and other women cannot handle that. They see that their jealousy crops up, their insecurity pipes in. Removing meaning from that and just understanding that, wow, they've done it well. They've got a great co-parenting relationship. And you, again, have an opportunity to see it two different ways. You can see it as you get to be with a guy who is that respectful, and you get to know that if he respects her that much and he's not in love with her romantically anymore, what in the crap does that mean for how he's going to treat me, right? So that's a beautiful thing. But then you can also go to the other end of the spectrum where you've got somebody who has a highly volatile, completely dramatic ex and makes life difficult at every given turn. That is a nightmare as well, right? For some people. And so if you get wrapped up in that emotion and you allow yourself to get emotionally charged, now you're living in this drama in this chaotic space instead of you guys backing off, removing meaning from either perspectives and just doing your life for what you guys want, having open communication and talking about it. Okay. And so it really can change the dynamic significantly when you step into a second marriage. So there are the top 5 reasons why your second marriage might be doomed to fail. But hopefully after you learn these tips today, you can mitigate this. You can do things to have open conversation about this with your future spouse, and you can overcome these obstacles before they're obstacles. So if you want to hear more tips, make sure you subscribe below. Make sure you like the video, share this with someone who might be going through something. If you want to be a part of our Facebook community, and most importantly, if you haven't done that work and you're ready to do that work, get on my website and book a call. Let's get on the phone and see if it's a good fit for us to work together so we can get you through this so you don't recreate and repeat history into your next marriage and set you up for success.